So how to really change the world. And I think what I love about Janine's message there was, don't pressurize yourself. It's about healthy growth, isn't it? So on the panel, we've got Erika Rushton, creative economist. I love that. I love it. Erinch Sahan and the Donut Economics Action Lab deal. Phil Korbel, Carbon Literacy Project, and Hannah Barron, Sustainable Materials Innovation Hub. Can we have a big round of applause, please? So, as you know, my style of hosting is very different. It's a conversation, and I think, I really want us to have a meaningful conversation. So really think about maybe some questions you might you want to ask, or even opinions, because we love opinions. Opinions and conversation makes us grow in so many different ways, and I'm learning as well. I think I've agreed with so many different people's opinions, like my head is all over the place. But Erika, I want to start with you first. When we talk about change, especially from a business aspect, what does that mean?
I spend a lot of time listening to a lot of people talk about very big change, and I think it can be really daunting, and you can end up just talking about it. And so I suppose my approach to change is often when I meet people, I support a lot of social organisations to get going. And I often say, well, let's just do one. Let's just try it. Let's just have a go. Probably one of the nicest things I ever ran in my life was a have a go fund. And it was because a community on the outskirts of Liverpool was saying, what's European money ever done for us? As European money was building roads and railways and loads of stuff. And actually, I hadn't really done anything for them. So we had a have a go fund, and you could get up to 500 quid to have a go at anything you wanted for yourself or for the community you lived in. And some of the stuff was just wild. And I suppose that's the principle I've carried through with me ever since, is you want to run a cafe, bake a cake. You want to run a community garden, plant a carrot. You want to run a market, stick a table outside your house and see if anybody will buy anything. And lots of the projects I've worked on have started really, really small and now are quite big.
And that's so general. Same question for you, Phil. Carbon literacy. How do we make those small changes?
Talk to people, mobilise, grow it, to borrow the word. Who in here is qualified as carbon literate? Brilliant. That was a sheer gamble, thank you. Who in here trains in carbon literacy? Yeah. This is our family. Unsurprisingly, given the audience who's here and what you were doing yesterday. It's time we stop this climate thing, this green thing, this doing better thing being a niche, isn't it? It's time where it becomes what you're not doing the right thing. Doesn't that mean you're doing the wrong thing? Yeah, it's time we stop being complicit in business and usual, which is trashing us in all these different ways, and energizing ourselves, equipping ourselves to do our best thing, whoever we are. Yeah, and that's the growth. That's the thing that we can do. And by that miraculous show of hands, it shows it's happening with this group as well. So there are these things. Everyone's got a best thing they can do on climate, and for our sustainability, in however you frame that, and it's just doable. We've got one methodology for doing it in our zone. There are others in other zones too. So really the message is do it and start. Don't hold back, and crack on. And the resources are there.
Same question, Erinch.
I mean, I'm going to bring it into the question of the way we design the businesses and the way that they either get in the way of action or enable action. I mean, I think everybody in this room knows of all the right things we need to do. We know that we need modular product design. We know we need to sequester carbon. We know we need to pay fair wages and incomes across supply chains and global businesses. What stops us? Well, a bunch of things stop us in the broader system. But one of the things as well is this outdated 20th century model of business, We have models that, and we're all talking about, let's go beyond shareholder primacy. Let's start looking at purpose-led business. But let's get to the next level of that conversation to really unlock action. So how do we restructure things? Who owns these businesses? How are they governed? Who sits on their boards? How are they financially structured? Where do their profits go? How do they channel their profits into the transformations needed? Now, once we get to that level of conversation, we start really unlocking those ideas, really unlocking those actions. And for me, change then starts to speed up. We get to a tipping point, which isn't 50%, by the way. All the tipping point literature tells us it's much closer to 20, 25%. We get to that point, and then change goes from happening slowly to just speeding up, becoming the mainstream, and that proof of concept sweeps through. So let's get there, but let's change the structures of business.
Hannah?
So I'm going to come at this from a slightly different angle. So I think from a materials angle, our material realities need to match up with our kind of economic and policy aspirations. So I think there's a lot of talk around kind of the circular economy and making things more circular and making sure things are recyclable and biodegradable and products are compostable. But what I'd say is that it doesn't really matter if something's recyclable or compostable or biodegradable if it's not actually recycled and composted and biodegraded at end of life. So I think a small change that businesses can make, if they're buying products or if you're looking at packaging and you're thinking about what happens at end of life when you're actually purchasing or product design as well, and thinking about how you can influence that and how you can influence your suppliers and your waste management companies to see if those products, those packaging, whatever it is, can actually be more circular and actually be have the best end of life fate in that sort of scenario.
Erika, I want to come back to you. In terms of, we were talking, Erinch mentioning about business models, but also who created these business models. Do you think that sometimes business models were created for an elitist group that even if you came from a certain background, you were never going to make it anyway? Because, a woman in Africa doesn't have a business model, but yes, she's delivering business and she knows how to recycle and all these things. But from a Western point of view, a UK point of view,
So I suppose I quite enjoy disrupting business models and borrowing from one world to another. So one of the things I'm involved in at the moment is, for want of a better word, a social investment fund. But because when we set out to build that, we didn't come from banking, so we weren't restricted by what bankers think social investment is, and we were able to talk to 150 people and quite quickly kind of decided we'd talk about money, not about investment or grants or loans. We just talk about money and talk to those 150 people around lots of different tables and said, well, what if it was your money? How would you like it to work? And what might the rules be? And without going into the detail of that, for example, lots of people said, well, social investment, we want to pay some of it back in social return. We don't want to, banks just want their money back, but social investors want their money back and social returns. That's a bit greedy. So we have a social investment fund where you can pay some of your money back in social returns, not just in money. And everyone's going, wow, that's really adventurous. That's a very progressive fund. And I'm thinking, God, if I'd known you could run a fund that loses £2 million every 4 or 5 years, I'd have made it up sooner. Great business. But then actually, it sounds daft and funny, but you look at lots of the businesses around us that function, and they lose way more than that every 4 to 5 years. Some of them have never even made a bloody profit. And yet we call them business, and we call them unsubsidised, and we call them commercial. And they're no more commercial than most of the businesses I work with. So I suppose back to your question, is there a form of business? Well, between us collectively, we have created it. We talk about the economy as if it's something that we have to work for. But actually, the economy has to work for us. Money is only a construct of ours collectively. So if you want it redesigned, I'm sorry, it's down to you. You've got to redesign it. If you want a different kind of business, you've got to have a go, create it, whether it's on your back street or down your back alley or in your bedroom. That's where it will start.
And I love that money is a construct. And it's funny because my son said to me, why do we have money? You know, why can't people just have what they want? And then trying to explain to him, you know, well, actually that could work, but then there are some greedy people out there like now that make sure that things are in place to make sure that certain people don't get hold of that money. So yeah, so it was really hard to trying to talk about money. Is a hard conversation. It's a very hard conversation, but yeah, same for you, Phil. Do you think, you know, touching on what Erika said about disruption of
I think it's how we reframe our thinking on what prosperity is.
Yeah.
When we started carbon literacy, we were very, very, you know, what's the carbon tonnage saved? Yeah. And just by listening to responses in the room, we rapidly moved into what are the co-benefits from climate action. So if we're subsidizing our staff's insulating of their homes, that's something we're working on with a company. So yeah, you're saving carbon tonnage, and we've got staff in warmer homes who are healthier, who are, you know, you can, these cascades. And that is again, moving it from a bloody nice to have into a must have. Yeah. If you're not doing that, you know, what the heck are you up to? So reframing our thinking on what prosperity is, longer windows of payback, however we define that payback. Absolutely, what are the social returns on this? And actually getting do I hate cost-benefit analysis? Yeah, but there is an element of that in there, that this stuff does have value. And sometimes those social returns are pigeonholed as a nice intangible or a bit political. You know, no. You know, warmer homes mean less sick people, mean better workforce. ... You know, so.
Well, see, Phil, you're able to actually, you all are able to articulate, you know, social
Just
impact.
about.
And but it's true, isn't it? And we've been having this conversation throughout the day about language. You know, a lot of people know what they want to say, but don't know how to say it.
Well, hello, literacy.
And, you know, and this is it, isn't it? Because the people who do get the funding and know how to tap into government funding are people who know the language. When you get the small SMEs, some of them in this room, that don't know the language, don't know how to articulate that, but they're doing such an amazing job and having to struggle along the way. So, we've just crested our 50,000th certified learner on Saturday, and we started from nothing. We have had no grant maintenance. We've had some government money to do stuff, to deliver services, but no sustaining grant. You know, we're a classic social enterprise success story because we had something good that we were passionate about. Well, hello, I think, how many of you are doing this? You know, it can work, it will work. Erinch, do you want to jump on that?
I mean, the danger I see all of us falling into is that we've known for 15 years, I mean, what Porter and Kramer wrote, 12, 15 years ago, the paper on creating shared value. The narrative on there's a business case for this. You're going to make even more money long term. We just got to account for this more effectively. We've got to crunch the numbers more effectively to show that actually this is good for your bottom line. We've been making that case for a long time. I've been a part of that in various initiatives in my life. And ultimately, it's not working. We're going backwards. We're transgressing on our planet's boundaries beyond its carrying capacity at an increasing rate. And we're falling short on life's essentials for millions of people across the planet at an increasing rate, where things aren't getting better. So the institutions, the organizations that are resisting change, we have to change them. We have to move the conversation over to the fact that, look, you're designed for an old way of thinking. You're a dinosaur. Having your model of ownership, your model of governance, it doesn't belong in this century anymore. It doesn't belong in this economy. And that means that we're going to have to get louder about this so we can celebrate all the wonderful things that are happening, unfortunately, mostly in the margins. But I think at some point we need to speak up about the structural change that's needed and what we're learning, because all of this is a proof of concept. This is an experiment that's showcasing what the future economy can look like. Now's the time to sort of speak up and say, look, we've got the proof of concept. Now we've got to transform you guys. And if you're not up for it, you're going to have to move aside because the future is coming.
Yeah, but then the people at the top who are benefiting from lack of knowledge, and gaslighting. Why would they want us to change? So obviously this suits them, that we don't have that, we don't have that intelligence. So a lot of us here know what needs to be done. We know the right way of doing it. We could scream about it till our heads are blue, but they don't want those changes, and that's where the resistance is coming from the top. Erika?
I just wanted to say, really, I think you're right, and I think that change in the narrative can be a really powerful thing. And sometimes I say, well, if you're not a social business, you must be an anti-social business then. And I think, and it's a play on words. But actually, it's true, isn't it? If you're not reinvesting your profits, then what are you doing? You're keeping them for yourself. If you're not paying your taxes, what are you doing? You're criminal. So I do think there is some language we could be using that is more adversarial, more challenging, and begins to grow the community we're a part of and marginalise those who don't want to jump the fence.
If I could add to that, Oxfam came up with a report at the beginning of this week that showed 2/3 of newly created wealth went to the richest 1% in the world. This isn't an accident, it's by design. I mean, companies' dividends have grown over the last 30 years to unimaginable lengths. This is an extraction that is happening from the real economy that is being redistributed up. This design of finance, this design of business is a choice that's been made. And I think we've got to focus the conversation. So if you're a business and you're a social business, don't tell us about the good thing you're doing in isolation. Tell us how that is enabled by your deep design. Tell us how the fact that you can reinvest your profits meant that you could do something that other companies can't. Tell us about the way that the fact that you've got other stakeholders on your board have meant you behave differently, that you've got different, supply chain relationships that structurally change what's possible for you. Let's move the conversation collectively to the structures of what's good, because otherwise we just celebrate a bit of good happening here, a bit of good happening there, and we move nowhere to structural change.
I guess I'm not really an economist, so this is all really interesting for me.
And you don't have to be. Your experience is more than enough.
And I guess I was listening to a podcast this morning about there's a summit going on in Davos at the moment, and it's kind of like a business meeting. And they were talking about how all of these huge companies were finally taking on board sustainability and thinking about the environment because it was going to be profitable for them in the long run. And I just think that's quite dangerous, isn't it, really? That they're not thinking about it because they actually want to benefit the environment or thinking about environmental, social or economic sustainability. It's genuinely so that they can turn a profit in the long run as well. And I think I'd be interested to hear what you guys have got to say about that as well. Yeah.
And it's interesting, Hannah, because, for a long time, a lot of makeup companies hardly would have black and tone makeup, and then they realized that they did a calculation that it was a multi-billion-dollar industry, and then all the shades came out. So a lot of these decisions are always financial. They're never because they truly believe in the planet. And I mean, I'm still at the belief that every small step leads to something. I'm always hopeful, and no matter what I see, I always think, there's better out there. It's going to eventually happen. And, talk about legacy and what do we want for our children, or what do we want for our grandchildren or our nieces and nephews, what kind of world do we want them to live in? So yeah, I think what are the small changes? Because I think people are trying to survive, and I think that's the hard part, is coming out of lockdown and still trying to think and having this positive mind frame was, oh God, I'm going to thrive. I mean, I meditate. I've meditated this morning, everything's going to be amazing. Then you walk out and you look and you're thinking, oh shit. So, the world is still messed up, but I'm going to stay hopeful. So how do we, what are the small changes we can realistically make,
Realizing that your wish for the right thing, that you're not alone, and talking about it. I think because we live inside our heads quite a bit, with, I'm this do-gooder in the corner, No. Actually, we've got this incredible instinct for empathy and collaboration and getting the right thing. So having that conversation and equipping yourself with the tools, thus in our zone, carbon literacy, is absolutely essential. And getting assertive in an effective way. I think this is, so, and translating the big picture stuff from the progressive, the brilliant, policies side of things into stuff that matters to the people in front of you, to your peers, starting with those conversations, but with solutions in your hand as well. So walking the walk as well as, and just learning that way to get the message across that isn't shouting into someone's face, but is utterly convincing and passionate. So learning those tools and having the confidence that you're not alone, and that actually the person you're trying to convince is very, very likely to agree with you if you open your mouth and get that conversation going.
I mean, yeah, one thing I would add to this that I've found useful and effective is to paint a vision of this inevitable future. Our economy has to become regenerative. We have to live with and within the cycles of our living world. If we don't, we're screwed. And we have to meet the needs of all people on this planet. And if we don't, the kind of social instability, political instability will make it untenable. That economy is coming. It has to be coming. Otherwise, we're giving up. And if we're going to belong to that economy, if the businesses are going to belong, the citizens are going to belong, the governments are going to belong to that economy, then these changes suddenly feel inevitable. They seem within reach, and they feels like, look, we're on this new carpet. This is the new carpet we've laid out. This is the new economy that's coming. Come join us. This is exciting. We are innovating here.
Well, see, so I'm loving this. I feel like I'm in question time. So they always say to it, so from a black female perspective, everyone say, oh, you've got to learn the language. You've got to know the rule book to break the rules. So then what happens? There's all these black businesses, we learn the rules, but then they change the rules. So then you're thinking, all right, oh crap, okay, so we need to do it this way now. So then you start navigating to try and fit into that little box and, thinking, okay, I'm gonna master this. So I think it goes back to what I was saying before about, we all know what's right, we scream about it, we talk about it, but the people at the top don't want us to. So do we want them to, or is it that we then just start creating our own community and saying, all right, then if you want to be part of this new economy, forget bitcoins and cryptocurrencies, sorry guys. But if you want to be part of this new economy of regenerating economy, look what we've done. Come into our world rather than we need to fit into your box. Sorry, Erika. Sorry. Because I keep on coming to you because you are a disruptor and you are an economical troublemaker.
Yeah. Well, just, you said you're not an economist. Well, I'm not. I just pretend. So I started out as an artist, but I managed to get into some rooms with people who I thought would have bigger heads and bigger brains than mine, that they'd sort of fill their skulls and they'd know how to run the world because they were running the world. But because I had that opportunity, I found out they didn't know what the bloody hell they were doing. And they were just like me. And so then I studied a bit of economics and I realised that there wasn't a truth or a way of doing it, or nobody really knew how it all worked. There was a number of theories and you could sign up to any one of them that you wanted. So I picked the ones I fancied and have lived by those ever since. I think your point about, so I think creativity is really important. And if you cannot imagine the world differently, then you're stuck with the one we've got. I was really lucky to do a bit of extra study and I got challenged. I said this earlier this morning. I got challenged to ask that academic question and they wouldn't let me start my dissertation till I'd said what question I was going to answer. Bizarre going on, but and was I looking at how you kept an organisation creative as it grew or entrepreneurial as it grew, and I wasn't sure which. And I discovered that there is no difference between creativity and entrepreneurialism, except that an entrepreneur monetarises the benefits of their creativity in its broadest sense, I mean, because it's about having an idea and thinking, I'll make that idea happen. I've gone off the plot, haven't I?
No, you're on it. You're on it.
But if I suppose that's what I think we have to collectively do, that new carpet. If it's not, I spend a lot of time with people who want to tell me what's wrong. And I feel like I live with a political narrative that's don't you do anything, we'll consult you, you tell us what you want, and then we'll go away and make it, and then we'll sell it back to you at a price you can't afford. That's consultation in the modern age. That is what we are being sold. Competition. We've been sold for 30 years that competition is a good thing. Well, it's not. Baltic Creative, that I had the honour of chairing for a number of years, that Gunan's now on, under the radar, we got 50% women on the board by a bit of a sleight of hand because nobody else bothered to turn up when we were interviewing people. So I got me say, guys, you should have turned up. And that 50% women on the board began to embed a culture of collaboration without even knowing that's what we were doing in a place. And in that place, people go, oh, it's the most fantastic tech place in the universe now, you know, fantastic success. Increasingly become more and more male as we've gone along. But actually 3,000 people work there who never worked there before in an area of a city that nobody else was interested in. My experience of talking, I do a thing called Women in Space up and down the country, and women always take on the space that nobody else wants until they want it and until they create some value, and then everybody wants it. So I think it's about where do we create and how do we create the demonstrators, and then we add those demonstrators together. You know, I'd love to go around saying the stuff I do is the best stuff, but actually the stuff you do is the best stuff, the stuff we do is the best stuff. Let's not compete with each other, because only together will we create that new carpet that you talk about.
And if we look at the way nature behaves, and we've got, you know, 3.8 billion years of evolution to take inspiration from, there's a bit of competition, but it's mostly mutualism. You know, plants and species share nutrients with each other, and there's a lot of generosity in nature. So if we ask the question, if this building weren't here, what would be happening? Well, there'd be wildland here that would be sequestering carbon. It would be cleaning the groundwater. It would be cleaning the air. It would be creating shade and coolness at 7 or 8 degrees cooler on the hottest days for local species. It would be giving nutrients back into the soil. And each species and bits of wildland would be in mutual connection with each other. There'll be no waste. A waste of one thing is an input to another. I mean, this is the genius of design that our living world has. If we take those principles into the way we design our economies and the way we design our social institutions, including businesses, I think we can go pretty far. So maybe it's partly shedding the arrogance that people know best. We haven't been here that long. We're not doing that well. We're kind of screwing things up. Let's take inspiration from what's been successful, which is the balance of the living world.
Hannah?
I'm kind of feeding into that, actually. I was going to say, what small changes can you make is to ask for help, and it feeds into what Phil was saying as well. There's so many organizations and so many networks and kind of like collaborative spaces where you can't know everything. No one person knows everything, and no one person can kind of make every single change that they need to make. There's so many choices out there. There's so many different options for everybody, talking about sustainability, talking about green this, green that. If you don't know as a small business, go and find some support. And I think this also feeds into what you were saying about kind of like the language that you use. So I work for an academic for the University of Manchester. So I spend a lot of my time translating for academics, because what they're saying makes no sense to normal people. So finding these organizations that can support you quite often for free and just kind of like give you some help. Just ask for help.
It's interesting what Erinch was saying before about, you know, learning from our land, and it just got me thinking. So my mum is the oldest of 10, and all living. She's 65, the youngest is 38. They're all alive. And my grandma was very big on nature and using things that she had learned for kids, making the kid, if the kids were sick. I mean, but her go-to remedy was Vicks. She was obsessed with Vicks. So when you get old women that smell of Vicks, that was my nan. But anytime we got ill, she used Vicks, and we never got hospitalized or anything. It must be a miracle. It might have changed by now because people say, oh, it's a paraben and all of this. But it's looking back at, like you said, it's looking back at history and saying, actually, how did we survive before all of this? There's certain things that we could implement into what we do now. Because I think that's all, it's innovation, isn't it? So we look at what's already there and say, how do we change it for the better, rather than trying to reinvent the wheel sometimes. So.
Start by telling the story.
Yeah.
And you don't need a course to be able to tell a story. We can all tell a story. Tell a story to people that might not be familiar with your story of change, of positive change. That's where those things start, and you'll find collaborators left, right, and centre. Yeah. Probably our preeminent corporate ally is just over there, Auto Trader, and you're going, what, a car dealer promoting the radical climate transitions? Yeah. And they're just one example of how you will find collaborators left, right, and centre. But the story has to be about how bloody brilliant your carpet is. This new vision. I'm probably a card-carrying catastrophist, if by profession I'm in climate. And yes, obviously, the fear of that disintegration and the awful scenarios that populate many of our heads still it drives us, but will not draw more folk in, because people don't like to look at grim nightmares. So we know that so much of the positive change, I'm talking about it within my frame of climate, but in the broader, in the donut, all those other aspects, the other segments, slices of the donut, they all have those fantastic stories of how we thrive, and reframing that and what prosperity really is, and challenging that model. And one day someone's going to design the carbon literacy course, which is an adaptable framework, folks, that tells the story of how we are being driven into collective misery, and we've been divorced from our true selves and what actually drives and makes us happy. And misery drives buying stuff we don't need for prices that we can't afford, that don't actually make us happy. We need to start challenging that narrative of misery, and counter that, the baseline of consumerism within this as well, going back to how we reframe what makes us thrive and what really prosperity is. But sorry, I was very much on a soapbox there, forgive me. Don't get on a soapbox, talk to your neighbours. It's the across the fence, the garden fence, the next door neighbour stuff. That's where the changes really happen. The next door desk, whichever, yeah.
We've got Erinch, you want for questions as well.
I want to add just one short story. So I used to tell a story. Here's a story. Maybe you'll remember it. I used to lead the World Fair Trade Organization. I had the privilege to meet social entrepreneurs in all corners of the world. One of the gentlemen I met, a guy called Matthew John in India, in Kerala, he had a business. He was a social entrepreneur, had a business called Last Forest. And when I spoke to him at the time, I was thinking, well, how do we help them scale? How do we help these businesses thrive? How do we help them grow their sales? And he told me, look, I work within an indigenous community, within a local landscape, within my forest, creating sort of products based on natural outputs from the forest. There's a natural limit to how big my business can be. I don't need to grow forever. I need to grow to the right size. And then I need to get comfortable in that right size. And that lesson, I think, is a phenomenal one for business. How many of our businesses can be designed to figure out what is its right size and try not to go beyond that, get comfortable on that in that space?
I like that. I like that a lot. I like it. I like it. Questions? Do you have any questions? Or are you just enjoying them talking? It's so good, isn't it? It's so good. But if you do have questions, put your hand up. But no, that's really interesting. I think, you know, I'm really fortunate that I still have. So I'm a Nigerian Scouser. Did I tell you that? No. So I'm a Nigerian Scouser, born in Nigeria, came to the UK when I was 4. And I still have family that live in a village in Nigeria, like, you know, mud huts and stuff like that. So I'm really fortunate. I haven't been for a long time because someone tried to kill me, but that's another story. So we haven't been for a while, but we still have family that live in villages. And I remember when we didn't really appreciate it. And I remember going on holiday to visit family, and we went to our clan. This is my mum's side of the family, and we took biscuits, chocolate biscuits, sweets, jellies, all that kind of stuff, because because people living in villages, that's what they want, isn't it? Is our horrible, products. So we took them, and we gave it to the kids, and they were just like they were so disgusted by these things that we had to take them back. But we left. We literally left. Our car was full of mangoes, oranges, papaya, is it guanabana? I was never know how to say it properly. Chickens. I have chickens. We took all, and I was only a teenager, but I remember just thinking, oh my goodness, we really think we're doing them a favour by taking our horrible products, these horrible sweets that taste awful, and expecting them to be appreciative, and it really stuck in my mind about, when we talk about consumerism. Consumerism is quite miserable. It is very miserable, isn't it?
It doesn't work.
It doesn't. Well, this is it, isn't it? So we live in this life where people are just miserable trying to fit in. And it goes back to your point of this man wants to just grow authentically, organically, and he knows his capabilities. Whereas we are fed this mind frame of grow, make as much money as possible, franchise. And actually, the more you grow, the more miserable you become. They say more money, more problems. Biggie said that. You can take it. But, but I don't know if you want to add to that.
I don't know how to follow that. But no.
Two-pack if you want.
No, it's reframing our vision of what that better world is and where better business comes into it, and having the confidence to know that the allies are there, the collaborators are there, the skills are there, and aiming high, knowing what trouble we're in. It's almost schizophrenic. I mean, we live in every climate report is, oh crap, and yet the vision for better. You always have to be, looking at the vision for better and keeping that in your head and countering. No, I was going to say countering the constant urgency of it. No, you need to keep that in your head as well, whilst looking to your well-being. So it starts from here. I always talk about my board, the people I report to every day are my daughters, and everyone's got that reference point, whether it's offspring or not, and using that to propel yourself to go further, to do those knackering late nights. Or whatever, because it works. It works on a change level, on a personal level. Again, why am I telling you this? You know that, don't you? I suppose I'm just trying to amplify it.
I've lost it.
Any questions? Oh yeah, we've got. Okay, well, let me go here first.
Thank you. I'm Harriet Dodd from Top Hat Coaching. I wanted to ask, I loved your point, Phil, about your board being your daughters. And I've noticed this beautiful chair's been sitting there all day, and it's been rather silent. So my question is to each of you, if the chair was your board, what question would you want it to ask you?
I think for me, it will be how do we get there simpler? I think we often make really simple things really complicated. So, and that happens at every level. You know, you want to, people talk about how to sort out poverty. Well, there's a really good solution to that, which is you give the people who haven't got any money some money, you know. So, and it was actually a boss I worked for who used to challenge me and say, what is the fastest, simplest way we can get there? And I often strip back what I'm doing and think, could we do it a bit simpler and faster?
I think that chair would be asking me to connect with it better. I've got the absolute privilege of spending more time in a beautiful place called Crestbrook Dale in the White Peak near Moxall Dale, if you know it. If you don't know it, it's amazing. And I can't tell you how much I've just got from being in that amazing bit of nature. It fuels you. Connect better with nature.
I remember I interviewed an author who had written a storybook for plants. And at first I was like, what are you talking, like, why would you do that? And it was for city living. So a lot of people who had moved into apartments had just decorated with all these plants. And he said, you need to talk to your plants. You need to talk because they grow happy, don't they, when you talk? So I was like, okay. And they were really good. It was a really good storybook. But yeah, talk to nature more. I think that would be the one for me is, you know, talk to what is nature saying to us, you know, in action. And it's already told us what's happening to it.
A quick confession, I used to wince at the very idea of tree hugging until I tried it.
I mean, one question I would love that chair to ask us is, if future generations were in the room, what would they tell you to do? How would they judge your actions? How would they judge your excuses for not taking those actions? And how would they tell you to just redesign everything, redesign your business, bring others, not just this chair in the room? What about the most voiceless, impacted community that links to you? What about the workers in your supply chain who is almost never in the conversation? What about all of the trade-offs? What about local ecology and the global living planet? So I would hope it would challenge me to think about those future generations and the embarrassing conversation I would have with them as a, you know, if I were leading a business, about my excuses for why I can't do this and that. And also what's stopping me from changing the structure of my business? I mean, there are so many companies that had put nature on the board for so long, whether it's River Simple or the original Ben & Jerry's had Greenpeace on the board, for instance. You know, these ideas have been, I mean, there are multi-stakeholder governance models all around the world of companies that have got different people and organizations and stakeholders on their board. I would want it to challenge me to go wider. Don't just stick with this. Change your whole system so you're accountable to more.
I think this chair would ask, how can we change our relationship with the materials world so that we're not constantly polluting, constantly digging up precious minerals, metals, so that we can kind of aid our consumption, and looking at sort of how we can change our relationship with materials, with consumption, with everything like that, so that we're not actually harming and polluting and the rest of it.
Yeah, I've got a question for Erika. I really liked what you had to say about the links between creativity and entrepreneurialism. And I've got a big question that probably needs a thesis to answer. But if you were to kind of offer your kind of most succinct advice, how would you say an organization goes about promoting entrepreneurialism at every level of the organization?
Well, I suppose if I give an example, because mostly that's what I'm best at. And so I ran a project quite a long time ago. I got seconded to do it, and it was in a part of Liverpool that kind of nothing was really working. And I didn't have any money and I didn't have any staff. It was like, oh, come and do this, but we haven't got any money or staff. Can you help? And so we invited organisations to get involved, but we said, bring your own money and bring your own staff. And at the height of that project, I had 80 staff working for me. Because we painted a compelling vision, we stopped talking about how poor and deprived and awful and poverty-stricken and God-forsaken this part of the world was. And we held a photography competition, invited people to tell us what was beautiful about this part of the city. And we put those pictures in the city centre and people looked at them and awarded a prize. And so we started really little with things we could afford to do. And those 80 staff, we told all the chief execs and boss people they could be the unblockers. So we anointed them the unblockers, and we said, if we get into trouble with trying to do stuff on the ground, you have to unblock it in your organisation. So they all felt very important. And then we asked the frontline staff, what could we solve? But let's not bother with anything we can't solve. So we didn't bother, anything we didn't think we had an answer for, we didn't bother with. But we were really good at dog shit, and we were really good at car parking, and we were really good at paving slabs, and we became really good at void housing, and we became really good at creating jobs, and we became really good at starting small businesses and using the profits off the car park to reinvest in the small businesses. So actually we began to build an ecology that began with dog shit, because that was important to people. And we discovered that the local authority had been mapping the dog shit for quite a long time. And they had maps of dog shit hotspots. But what nobody had done was, whilst they went out to map it and see where it was, they hadn't picked it up. So we picked it up and we put it in the bin. And then we asked, residents would be like, what are you doing? And they started to pick it up and put it in the bin. And then women would come out and say, don't let your dog shit there. So what was picking up dog shit creative? I think it was. I went to another local authority and they went, all anybody wants to talk about around here, we want to do what you've done. All anybody wants to talk about around here is dog shit and car parking. And I said, that's a very good place to start.
Do you have any questions or even a comment? Oh, I mean, that's not a bad thing. I mean, because I know you're enjoying yourself. Go on. Thing is, when you say don't sweat the small stuff, but actually the small stuff is the thing to sweat about. Yeah.
Thank you all so much. This has been really amazing to listen to. I guess it's a comment, a question, a challenge for everybody is, how do we as a better business sector work better together to amplify the change? I think we're all doing really amazing things in our small pockets. So how do we collectively make that change? And then how do we start to permeate the other world, the other businesses? So yeah.
All right, I've got an action plan for all of you guys that are in that circle of better businesses that are pioneering something. Collectively, talk about how what you are is an experiment of this future economy, this new carpet. And I don't mean this in a rhetorical or in a sort of abstract way. Talk about the ways that the structures of these businesses are different to mainstream companies and how that enables you to do what you do. The reason I emphasize this so much is if we talk about it in those terms, we start moving the conversation towards, well, how do we, from a legislative point of view, a government policy point of view, shape these businesses that are emerging? This is a choice. I mean, the Corporations Acts are a choice. The way industry policy works is a choice. All of them have shaped a particular kind of business, and you're all creating a different kind of business. So rather than just celebrate the good stuff happening or the fact that maybe you've got benevolent founders that use their power for good, move over towards the structural features of your businesses and then demand collectively that these have to be the mainstream economy's dominant business structures as well.
Open your doors and share something. Did you know that the UK's largest company that does vehicle recycling, scrapyards, is called Cinetic. They're a carbon literate company. And on our first carbon literacy action day at the Glasgow COP, they've got a site in Winsford in Cheshire. They were running a carbon literacy course and they just opened their doors on an industrial estate and just said, come on, Anyone? It's going to be a bit about car recycling, but come and see what we're doing. So that spirit of connection and dipping your toe in the water, and a bit of open generosity, and the forming of those interpersonal relations, the less likely stuff. Open your doors and share something to start those conversations.
Yeah, I suppose to answer that question, I think I used to come to things like this and think that I needed to tell everybody how fantastic what we were doing was. But it kind of falls for the competition thing, that really, doesn't it? And I wonder if there's something really practical we could do, which is tell other people how fantastic somebody else is, because that starts to build those collaboration links. A friend of mine used to call it throwing bouquets at each other. That, if I throw a bouquet at you, likely as not, when you're in a room without me, you'll throw one back. And it forces us to, I always think of the economy as a honeycomb, not a pyramid. If it's a pyramid, then someone's at the top, whereas if it's a honeycomb, apparently that's the strongest structure in the world. And if together we're a honeycomb, then we're a strong economy.
Thanks. And I think this all feeds into kind of building communities. And obviously there's a community here today, but that doesn't mean you're restricted in building other communities, whether that's local in your locality or whether that's in your sector. Sustainability shouldn't really be competitive. It's about sharing knowledge. It's about kind of working with people to share best practices. So yeah, find communities outside of people who are already doing it and try and support other businesses and other individuals that want to be more sustainable but just don't know how.
And I'd like to support what you're saying there, Hannah. I read in the paper, along with this, 1% who've got 60% of the profits or something, there's also a group of 200 really wealthy people who've said, tax us. And I do a thing with Andrews in the front row here. We call it DIY economies. And I think, well, you can tax yourselves. And I think we could encourage people to join us. Those 200 people, great idea. Encourage I learned on one of my very first management courses, encourage the behaviour you want rather than attacking the behaviour you don't. Because people like to be encouraged and they hate being attacked. So I think we could encourage those 200 people and say, very good idea, DIY. Tax yourselves, because there is a whole community of people here who can put that tax to good use and demonstrate how great it would be if the government raised taxes for wealthy and even middling wealthy people.
Oh, fantastic. On that note, they've done actions, haven't they? Yeah? Tax the rich. Start with dog shit. No, this has been absolutely amazing. Can we have a big round of applause, please?